Today on the TMZ Podcast.
Welcome to the TMZ Podcast. Jason and Derek here.
Derek, a couple great stories today that are right up your and my alley. First, we're going to get to Kate Moss for a second. She and her sister have been in the news recently talking about a little bit of issues of nepotism, which is something you and I talk about, what it takes to get into the industry, and is it just the way it goes, or is there something wrong? But we'd be remiss not to start with Justin Bieber, who at the ripe young age of 28 years old.
He's still in his 20s. He's been famous for so long.
He has just sold all of his music catalog for $200 million.
It's unbelievable. It's part of a trend. Let's get right into it. This is the story of the day because we see these all the time. Artists are selling their catalogs for these exorbitant nine-figure sums. But most of the time we're seeing it with older artists who have these historically important songs and they sell the sort of cash flows associated with that songs to some other entity and they take the cash up front.
So for example,
tons of them.
Just give me one. Who's the biggest?
The biggest is Bob Dylan.
Okay, so you get Bob Dylan. Bob Dylan is now in his 70s, I'm guessing.
Yes.
He's got a catalog worth hundreds of millions of dollars, maybe 80s. And he wants to enjoy his life. His money has been tied up. I mean, he's obviously a rich guy, independent of that. But his catalog, his money's been tied up in his catalog. And he's like, you know what? What am I doing here? Let's enjoy my life.
Yes, but I won't be able to collect all the money. I don't have as much time left, so exactly. I should take it up front.
Why am I going to continue to make $10 million a year, which is great, when I could get... How much did he sell it for?
$300 million for his publishing catalog and his masters for $200 million.
So $500 million. Now I can do with this whatever I want. I can buy islands if I want.
That's right. And it makes sense for the other side of the transaction, too, because they get the cash flows associated. Yeah. They, over time, as a company, will probably make more, or they think at least, that they're going to make more than $500 million. That's why they do the deals.
Right.
But there's here's the cash up front.
Right. But Bieber's 28 years old.
Yeah. Bieber is 28 years old. You don't see it as often because the catalog value is not as well known.
Right.
Bob Dylan songs,
commercials,
movies, everything. Everyone
streaming,
knows
yes.
Bob Dylan. But the company who bought it is a company that's really big in this business. They're called Hipgnosis, Hipgnosis. And they buy these catalogs all the time. So the business must be working in some sense. They own David Crosby, Neil Young, Barry Manilow, Richie Sambora, Blondie, Chrissy Hynde from The Pretenders, Dave Stewart from the Eurythmics, Red Hot Chili Peppers.
How did you get Richie Sambora in that list?
I know. How did Richie have anything to sell without John Bond?
How did Richie slide into that list?
It's pretty good. I put him in there. So he's selling this catalog for $200 million. These deals are usually in the nine figures for big artists.
So this company, Hipgnosis, has its billions of dollars in outlays that are dependent upon future royalties.
That's right. And they're amassing this eclectic catalog, I assume, for putting them in movies, licensing the rights for movies, commercials, and so forth. Streaming. They have a business plan. Yeah. And so Justin Bieber selling his catalog, it's an interesting inflection point. We said he's 28, but Justin Bieber used to be I want to say like the Taylor Swift of his era. Like Taylor still has this like huge impact when she releases an album, and I'm sure Justin Bieber would as well, but he's taken a little bit of a step back. So now he looks at his catalog and he says, I should just cash this thing out. Even if I put out new records, this thing has value. I don't maybe want to tour as much. He seems to be a married man who's sort of stepped back a little bit from the limelight, and so he's making this Bob Dylan old man move in his 20s.
Yes.
What do you make of this? Like, what is this, I guess, sort of, is it a harbinger of Justin Bieber moving into a different phase, or just, I want cash and I'll still make new music?
I think it could be something big. I think this could be his departure from the music industry, potentially. Justin Bieber's always been not in a bad way, but a strange dude.
Mercurial.
Right? I would say is a
fair
He's a mercurial guy, and he hasn't really been making much music recently. He and his wife seemingly have a wonderful relationship. They care about each other deeply. And it almost seems like he's like, I want out. Give me my ball. I'm going to go home with it. And I'm going to be very happy.
I'm going to give you an even hotter take.
Uh-oh.
They've faced some health issues along the way. Haley has been in hospitals. They're both very young, but for some reason, he had partial paralysis of his face. I think he's sort of confronted mortality at a very young age, and he wants to enter this new phase where he and Haley are going to make a family. I honestly believe that this is a harbinger of entering this like sort of middle-aged phase of life. Usually you do this in your 30s. He's doing it a little early. I think because he's bored with this.
Wouldn't that counsel in favor of keeping the collection so that...
No, he wants the cash.
But that we know that theoretically, the reason Hipgnosis is paying for this is because over time it's going to pay more than they're paying up front.
Yeah.
He's 28. He's got not just this income. He's got income that rolls in like crazy, right?
He didn't want to manage it.
He doesn't want to manage it, right?
$200 million is so much money, Jason. He can take $200 million and put it in a bank account, and on the interest alone, earn millions and millions of dollars a year to just live on without worrying about license.
Millions and millions of dollars less than he could earn by just simply licensing it out. I get it.
But with much less, like, angst.
I guess.
He doesn't have to worry about his image at all. He can just live his life as a dad. He can put on like he can grow a pot belly. He doesn't. There's no pressure once you've cashed out. I guess is what I'm saying.
I guess
he can just
except you watch that money
Bieber.
dwindle in your bank account every time you spend it. You're like, oh, sweetie, can we afford that?
You are projecting, my friend.
That indeed I am.
So I find it a fascinating move. I think $200 million feels like I'm not the biggest Justin Bieber fan, but it feels like the right amount when I look at these other sort of sales. Imagine Dragons sold theirs for $100 million. Justin Bieber seems about double an Imagine Dragons.
Timberlake was $100 million. It says
Timberlake.
Here.
I would think more for Timberlake because I think of the heir apparent to Justin Timberlake.
I'm
being
a little
Justin
surprised
Bieber.
that Imagine Dragons wasn't worth $25 million.
Yeah.
Tops. I got to tell you, I'm sort of. They had a good negotiator.
He made more than Neil Young, though. Can you believe that? $150 million for Neil Young, one of the greatest songwriters in history.
What does Neil Young own in those songs, though? I wonder.
I think most of it.
Really,
right? I think he is like this, like irascible, like politically motivated guy who probably hoarded his music rights. That would be my sense. I don't have any sort of direct knowledge of that, but it sounded like the right. I wanted to get on this and sort of criticize, like, how could you pay $200 million? But I think they'll make it up.
Oh, absolutely.
I think they're going to make money on this deal.
Absolutely.
I think Bieber will be happy.
It may take 15 years, but then once you make it up, and you got to finance the loans and everything else, once you make it up, then on the out years, it's all gravy. This hypnosis company, it's Blackstone back. They're going to be one of the biggest owners of popular music from this generation.
I think that's right.
Actually, from the last 4 or 5 generations of all time, they're going to be in 30 years. Once they've made back this money, they're going to be this company that just brings in cash.
That's right. And the reports are just to give it some context. They buy a bunch of catalogs. This is their biggest splash ever. Spending $200 million on Bieber is the centerpiece of their catalog because I don't think you're going to make as much on Richie Sambora. I mean,
probably not.
Maybe a couple bucks there. But I want to move on to what is my favorite sort of news of the day. Tell me about Kate Moss's half.
Before you do,
actually, go ahead.
I had one more thing.
Yes.
Whose catalog? I have 2 names in mind. Is the most valuable. The Beatles is the most valuable catalog in history. It's worth
Put them off
billions
to
of
the
dollars.
side.
It's owned by Apple Music. I think there's actually one artist who I think's catalog this artist still owns their own catalog. I'm not going to be giving away.
I don't know if he owns it, but I'm going to say Elton John.
Elton John's big.
Okay, who do you say?
Big. Mariah Carey.
Oh, huge. And I think she does own a lot of it. She wrote many of those songs. She wrote most of them.
That frickin' Christmas song.
Gigantic.
Kicks off money like nobody else. Elton John's very good.
Just a huge catalog.
It's a huge catalog.
Like
Mariah's isn't as big, but she's had more number ones than anybody else.
The most. Those are going to make some money. 19 number ones.
And her big Christmas song, All I Want for Christmas Is You, every year, forever, will kick off millions and millions of dollars in royalties.
That song is the biggest annuity you can hold.
It's
just a perfect thing to kick off.
All right.
Tell me about Kate Moss's half-sister Lottie. She got into some hot water with her views on why she's successful.
Well, I don't know how much hot water she got on. I think there were a bunch of trolls out there who were getting
so much that she left Twitter.
Yes. So the half-sister of fashion icon Kate Moss, one of the biggest supermodels of all time.
We have to explain to people. In the 90s, heroin chic was the look.
Yes.
And Kate Moss was the leader of that movement. She would be in these black and white photos with a disaffected look on her face, and she was an icon. I mean, there's no doubt about it. She was the most famous person of the 90s fashion world.
Right. So anyway, so her sister, her younger sister Lottie, is now a player in the music industry. In the modeling industry, in the fashion industry, and is getting some really important gigs, walking runways. And as a result, she's getting some hate. People are coming after her, saying you only getting this because your sister is Kate Moss.
She also looks a bit like the same look. They're related.
They're related.
She's trafficking in the same idea.
So Lottie, not one to take this kind of slight sitting down, comes out and says some pretty outrageous things, really. She says, I'm so sick of people blaming nepotism for why they aren't rich and famous or successful. It's not fair that people who come from famous families are getting a leg up because of that. But guess what? Life isn't fair. If you put your mind to something, you can accomplish anything. So instead of being negative about other people's success, go and try and create your own.
All right. So I would ordinarily just want to drag people like this. They boil my blood. But I'm going to give her due in this respect.
Yes.
Before I do that. But I am going to do that, just so you know. Lottie is in an industry where you can't You can't fake it. You can't fake it. She's not inheriting a company where it could be a ne'er-do-well who has no idea how to run a business.
If she
has to be good looking.
If she was a bridge troll, she would not have gotten the gigs, notwithstanding. I don't know how far that gets you,
Exactly.
right?
I'm not sure how she did get the opportunities in the modeling industry from the name recognition
there are lots
of the
of pretty
Moss
women
name.
out there who just never get a break.
Right. But she is beautiful.
Yes.
And you have to at least meet that level. I mean, we talk about the Kardashians in this respect too. Like, your favorite Kardashian or your favorite Jenner is Kendall Jenner, who is a huge modeling icon now. Did she get the opportunity because she was part of the most famous family in America? Probably, but she's also drop dead gorgeous. So she can walk a runway and not seem out of place. The nepotism that
I admire her for her mind and her business acumen. I don't know what you're talking about.
The nepotism that usually bothers me more is when it really misallocates resources and
the lack of any merit whatsoever.
Yeah, that right. I think is bad for society to have someone who doesn't know what they're doing inherit a company that could be valuable in the hands of someone more talented.
All right, that was sweet. Now drag poor Lottie.
But I will say this, to shove this in the face of your detractors is not a good look.
Yes.
This is something that if you are the beneficiary of nepotism, you quietly accept it, you with humility mention the advantages that you've had, and you move on and be successful.
Yeah.
When you say, how dare you,
go suck it.
Go suck it, life ain't fair, it really angers the Twitterverse. And she's got so much hate that she left. I mean, it becomes unbearable.
So Derek and I have talked about nepotism a lot, and I'm more forgiving of nepotism. And
I would say you're a proponent.
And by the way, neither of us come from anything.
No.
My parents, great parents who got me ahead in life generally, but never in an industry of any kind. And but nevertheless, I just view nepotism as the way it is, and every parent does. Nepotism doesn't just involve parents and kids, but every parent does for their kid. Every sister does for their half-sister whatever they can to get them ahead. I give my kid every possible advantage I can give, and I make no apologies for that. Right. I send my kids to fancy private schools. I will get them tutors to take the SATs. And there are people who are less fortunate, who don't have those resources, who look at me and go, that's so unfair. And you know what I say? That's right. It is unfair. Yep. But I care about my kids and getting them the leg up. And I would certainly love to see more equality out there generally and everybody have access to everything.
Sure.
But the way the world is structured, I do what is best for my kids, and I will not apologize for that.
And listen, and also I want to say your kids will benefit from these things, but they're also talented. I know your kids. Well, they will wear that. They'll have to sort of wear that cross.
But there are lots of talented kids who are not going to be given the opportunities and are probably not going to, may or may not achieve the same successes, or who knows if my kids are going to be successful.
Right.
Probably if you're not.
Right.
But nevertheless, I just bristle at the idea that Kate Moss shouldn't forget that Lottie's statements. I cannot justify those comments in any way. It's so stupid. But if Lottie Moss can call up her sister and say, hey, can you call the head of Fashion House X and get me on the runway, and Kate's got the power to do it, and Kate loves her sister, I have no problem with Kate picking up the phone and calling the head of Fashion House X.
Yeah, and there's something you said. The last point I'll make is when the rubber hits the road, you have to be able to walk the walk of whatever industry you're in. And that gets exposed whether you've gotten more opportunities because of your famous name, whether you've gotten doors open because of fancy colleges you've been in. I've been a beneficiary of having gone to fancy colleges. I get a lot of interviews. I get opportunities. But ultimately...
But you earned that.
I earned that part.
You lied in your application quite a bit.
Yeah, exactly.
But otherwise...
I learned how to fudge a transcript. But but that opens the door. But ultimately, in any industry, you gotta walk the walk. You have to know what you're doing. And, you can keep the job for a while if you're the beneficiary, the scion of a big company, but if you botch it, you'll botch it. If you can't do it, you can't do it.
So one day you are the head of TMZ.
Yes.
And your daughter
glorious. the head of this fiefdom.
You want to sell?
I get to stand on the
pedestal.
By the
way, sell the catalog to Hypnosis and cash out. So your daughter comes to you. She says, Daddy, I want a job. She's 24 years old, graduated college, want a job doing this. You see another candidate who is clearly better, more experience, understands the issues you're confronted with better. Who do you give the job to?
You know I can't turn down my sweet Dixie. I mean,
right,
it's
exactly.
True. It's true. It's the collision of the softness you have for your children and what you think is actually right. So you're right. That'll do it for us. We'll see you next time.
All right, bye.